Hello and welcome back to Motivation Effects, the little channel that could. My name's Dave. Today I want to go over the story of Daniel and the Lion's Den as told by Neville Goddard. Neville was an incredible spiritual teacher who taught that the truth of the Bible didn't depend on historical fact, but rather the Bible is a book of psychology. Each story in the Bible contains a character. Those characters are states of consciousness, going all the way back to Adam and Eve, Moses, Abraham, Noah. They're all states of consciousness that each one of us will go through at some point in our experience here on earth. I remember when I first heard Neville in one of his lectures talk about this, that the Bible is not a historical book, it's a psychological book. It totally blew my mind, and it almost instantly made sense. When the student is ready, the teacher shows up. I will tell you that I am going through right now my own Daniel experience. So this is very personal to me, and I think that there are others that can benefit from me sharing this. Basically, Daniel was a very powerful man. His actual name interpreted is God is my judge. In the story, Daniel and the whole state of Israel is basically captured and brought to Babylonia and forced to live as the Babylonians, worship the king, eat the food that the Babylonians ate, and do all the rituals, or be put to death. That was basically the choice. Daniel and a few of his friends, who were pretty high up in political office of Israel, were forced by the king to be in high office for him. And in those days, the king wanted to be worshipped as the only God and did not want anyone to put any other God before him. Well, Daniel was a man that was known for his allegiance to the one God. Neville went on to say that he was so righteous that the other senators and governors and men of power didn't like him because he wasn't corrupt on any level. They noticed that Daniel would always go to his home, open the window facing Jerusalem, and pray to his God. Long story short, they didn't like this. They go to the king and they say, hey, you need to create a law that says for the next 30 days, anyone caught praying to a God other than you should be put to death. King liked this idea. He made it so. And as you might guess, these men found Daniel praying openly within his second-story window to his God. So they tell the king. Reluctantly, the king says, well, the law is the law. We got to put him to death. In those days, you were thrown into a lion's den. The king didn't want to do it. He knew Daniel was an effective leader, but his hands were tied. So Daniel was thrown into the lion's den. The lions were starved so that they would be ready to basically maul and eat anybody they threw down there. But what does Daniel do? And again, remember, this is all allegory. It's all symbolism. Daniel turned his back, took his attention away from the lions, who were probably growling and snarling, thinking they're about ready to get a meal, and takes his attention off of the lions and looked up to the light. And it says an angel came into the den and closed the mouths of the lions and put them to sleep. So what does this mean? Well, the lions are a metaphor for whatever problems we're facing. It could be money problems, it could be health problems. And Daniel's story tells us how to deal with these problems. You don't focus your attention on the problem. You turn your back to it and you focus on the light or the solution to your problem. Let's just say you're having financial problems. Conventional wisdom would tell you, you got to focus in on this and you got to figure out a plan where you can get more income, attack the debts with this type of strategy or that type of strategy. That's not what the story of Daniel is telling us. We are to turn our back, look up into the light, which is our own wonderful human imagination, and we imagine the solution. Now, in the story, the solution would be obviously getting out of that lion's den. Going back to the example of financial problems, our solution would be financial freedom and how it would feel to know that you were debt-free, that you had more money than you knew what to do with. And again, it's got nothing to do with coming up with a plan. Daniel didn't turn his back and start looking around for a rock or a stick to turn into a spear so he could fight the lions. He just turned his back on them and he focused on being out of the den. And when he got out, he rose to more power than he'd ever had before. Now, I will say that this is just a small part of the story of Daniel. There's way more to it, and there are videos that people have posted that go into depth and tell you Daniel's whole story. This particular part of the story just really resonates with me, and like I said, I'm going through my own Daniel and the Lion's Den experience, but I also know how to get out of it. I'm going to turn away from the problem, and I'm going to look into my wonderful human imagination. I'm going to imagine what it would feel like to have the solution, to be in that state where I'm no longer in the Lion's Den. So that's it. I hope this helped, and I'll see you in the next video.